Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. My name is Hamish Alangaratne, and since 2023, I've been interviewing some of the most talented and well-respected quality leaders in the pharma and biotech industry to learn how they got to where they are now. This season is all about our guests and their journeys. Why they got into science, how they got into quality, their biggest challenges and greatest learns, and the highs and lows along the way. Every week, I'll be bringing you a new guest with the purpose of inspiring the next generation of quality leaders. Welcome to Season 3. I hope you enjoy the show.
Hi all, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Quality, the podcast. Today I'm joined by Elisabeth Hutchins. Liz is the Senior Director of Quality at Upstream Bio. She's been in this role for now 2.5 years, recently promoted to Senior Director. A lot of the listeners of this show are going through their management journey into bigger leadership roles. So I really want to speak with Liz to understand that shift from tactical to strategic quality leader. So we talk about her journey and some of the challenges that any person will face as a quality leader going from manager into director, into senior director and beyond, and how to navigate some of those challenges, what to look out for. We talk about building teams, hiring triggers. We talk about softer skill development, mentors and the role that they play. So for anyone that's in that management role early on in their career and really looking to develop their skills as a leader and how to go from that tactical executioner to strategic, this is a great episode to listen to. So let's get into it. Hi, Liz. Welcome to Let's Talk Quality. How are you doing?
I'm doing good today. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us. We're going to talk a bit about your current career and I suppose that shift into bigger remit, strategic thinking as a quality leader. I think a lot of the people that I speak to are going through that transition. So I think it will be a really good insight into some of the things that you've faced in terms of challenges and how you've got over that and how you're working through those things as you build into your bigger role. So I've given a very brief introduction, but if you could give the listeners and viewers a really quick overview of you, who you are, what your role is right now, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. So my background, I have a degree in biochemistry. And I was on the bench for a while in industry and then eventually transitioned into a quality role. I started at a pretty low level in quality and gradually made my way to my current role, which is Senior Director of Quality.
Awesome. So you're now Senior Director of Quality at Upstream Bio. Tell us what your role entails right now.
Sure. So my role right now is to just manage all of the quality ins and outs of the day-to-day. So I have a team of staff that run the quality operations from both the GMP side, the GCP side, and the quality management side. So my role is to manage all of them, make sure we're getting all of our tasks done, and we're supporting all of our functional representatives as they need.
Fine. Okay. So you've got a lean team underneath you. And you're reporting into is it a VP of Quality and Regulatory, I think it was, you said?
Senior VP Qual and Reg, yeah.
Senior VP of Quality and Reg, right. Okay, so I'd imagine that you're the sort of go-to person for all things quality.
Yes.
Within the organization. Obviously, you've got that reporting line upwards. Okay, so let's take it back then a bit. How did you initially get into science and into your QC role?
So I've always loved science. Ever since I was a kid, I knew that this was something I wanted to do. When I graduated and I had my degree in biochem, I worked on the bench because that's just what you do with a degree in biochem. Yeah. And it just wasn't something I think that I wanted to do long term. So I ended up finding a role at a very small company with like 12 people. And it was all hands on deck. We had a contractor and a consulting organization that was helping with some of our quality systems creation and development. And I volunteered to help support that activity. And as I was doing that, I realized that it was something I really, really enjoyed. So from there, I took another role at another company that was very similarly to help them start developing their quality systems and be that quality representative for them. From there, I just kind of took off and dove into things. I was very lucky through my early career in quality to have some very excellent mentors that were really able to kind of show me the ropes and give me confidence to be able to make decisions and think about things and make our quality systems my idea at those companies, which was really nice.
Awesome. So a lot of the people that listen to this show are going through that shift into a bigger role or looking to, they might be at manager level, senior manager level, director level, and they want to take on a bigger remit, right? So you've been senior director, you're overseeing quality at Upstream, you've been there for a few years now. How do you think your role, so when you came into the company versus now, can you see a change in terms of what your role is now versus what your role was 2-3 years ago?
Yeah, absolutely. When I started at Upstream, we were very small. I mean, we still are a pretty small company, but we were new. I think the company was maybe 18 months old when I joined. So we really didn't have a lot of quality systems implementation. It was very bare bones, what we needed for the time, which was kind of pre-phase one and beginning phase one. So the quality needs there were really QMS development, making sure that the functional teams had a quality representative to go talk to about things. But it was a lot more tactical, writing SOPs, developing systems, training staff, being on call for any sort of quality issues that might pop up, those types of things. I think over the 3 years, just about 3 years that I've been there, my personal role has shifted to be more strategic. So I'm sitting in rooms with our management teams and our executive management teams talking about quality strategy. Like, what do we need to do to reinforce our quality systems in the organization? How do those quality systems support other functions? What do other functions need from quality to be successful? And having those conversations and start to brainstorm what that relationship looks like. I think now the role has, because we went from a very small organization and we've grown quite a bit in the past couple of years, it's also trying to find and determine and decide what quality's role truly is, right? So in the beginning, when we're very small, we may end up kind of being involved in things that may not normally be considered quality's role because somebody needs to do it, right? And so again, all hands on deck. But now that we've grown, we've matured as an organization, we really have to figure out what truly is a quality responsibility and what is something maybe that's more of a support role that we can play. So I think it really was very tactical in the beginning. And now my personal role, I've kind of been able to pull out of that a little bit by leveraging my team to make sure that we're still meeting those tactical duties, but while still being able to get involved more strategically.
So at what point was it when you not necessarily realized, but where you first realized that you had to sort of make that shift into bringing more people in and taking on more of a strategic mindset, strategic role within the organization? Can you remember when was there a moment? Was there a phase where it happened?
Yeah, I'd say when we were transitioning to phase two, maybe is where that happened, where we realized, we being my boss and myself, because we were the only quality people at the time, we really were going to need more support from a quality perspective, but that we had been somewhat reactive, I think, from a quality perspective, and that we needed to start thinking more strategically as we got into phase two. What do we need for the next step? What is this going to look like for phase three when we get there, right? When for commercialization, like that's so far in the future, but you really have to think about that pretty early to begin building the blocks on which you will eventually kind of create your QMS for late phase two, phase three commercialization. So I think I'd say coming into phase two is when we started to grow our team. We hired somebody specific to QMS, so they were able to help with some of that tactical work about getting our training system in a little bit more of a robust spot, making sure our document control was where it needed to be, et cetera. And then bringing in those functional quality representatives for GMP and GCP to support.
Yeah. So it's really the phase of the company and how things are progressing, which then dictates, right, we need to bring people in so that I can now focus on what the future holds and what the quality function holds and how we need to operate. So take us to that sort of transition and that phase around hiring people and bringing people in. How did your role, when you brought these people in, how did your role change?
Yeah, so it was kind of an interesting, like bringing these people on. So when I was in my role as director, when I started at Upstream, we started hiring these team members. We all reported into Senior VP Quality Regulatory. So it was a very flat reporting structure, which I think was really nice. I was able to kind of work with these people on the same level. We created a very, very good working relationship. We have a great team. And I ended up being promoted back in June of this year, which then kind of restructured our reporting function. I think I had already been able to really develop a good relationship with the team. So changing that structure really was like a paper exercise. I don't think it really changed how we already worked as a team.
Was it like an obvious thing, as in the people that you'd brought in, obviously they were reporting into the SVP, but you were the sort of go-to still, or the most senior quality person?
Yeah, I think so. I think that also had to do somewhat with the fact that I had been at the organization the longest out of everybody too. So I kind of knew the ins and outs and the history of why we were doing things. And a lot of the executive team members and other senior leadership team members, if they had quality questions, they would be coming to me to ask the question, right? So I could kind of help with that. And so inherently my role just kind of transitioned into this more strategic piece where I had a little more insight and interaction with the executive team because of.
Yeah, got you. So for people going through that transition or want to go through that transition of hiring, obviously it's dependent on how well the company is doing and how everything related to clinical data and trials. But if you're in that position, you need to start hiring. A lot of people struggle with that, getting a bigger role. A lot of people have been in manager, director roles for a long time, maybe down to misfortune of companies, but maybe down to lack of awareness of how to take on a bigger role and not being able to cope in that sort of environment. What do you think the biggest challenges are in that sort of transition?
I think it's kind of twofold. So there's the piece of like trusting yourself, which I think is really critical. I don't think that you can successfully transition into kind of the next role, if you will, if you're not ready to trust yourself and that you are ready for that role. So I think that is a really important piece of it. I think the other piece is like having that support system in your organization. I think I'm very lucky that my senior VP is amazing and she's a great person for me to be able to go to with any questions I have. And she'll pressure test me too, right? So we'll have those good conversations and it allows me a safe place to kind of prepare to then go to other places in the organization to present those same thoughts, right? And so she can say, hey, you can say that, but this person may question this. What do you think about that? How are you going to respond to that? So, having that safe space to try things out, if you will, before just going into the real world, I think is also absolutely important. I would be, I think, more nervous to take on a new role and not have any support because it probably feels very lonely, but like you need somebody to kind of help bring you to that and help build your confidence in that role.
You mentioned trusting your own ability, I suppose.
Yeah.
But that also requires, for you to build trust in your own ability, you need to see evidence that you can do it, and you've built up enough evidence for you to believe that when you're in that position you can. So are there any things that you've developed over the course of your career or that you've experienced over the course of your career that allowed you to build that trust in yourself?
Yeah, I think, again, I've been very lucky to have some great mentors who I was able to bounce ideas off of and who are like, yeah, like that does make a lot of sense. Why don't we try that, right? And so I had that support with making decisions. But I think also what has helped me develop my trust in myself is just like the little things, right? Having conversations with certain people and being able to see maybe a thought shift in them from a quality perspective. Quality is tough. I know quality is everybody's job, but it doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of people have quality in the forefront of their mind when they're making decisions. So even small things like having a discussion with somebody about a document and saying, hey, this piece seems to be missing from this document. Like, how are we going to make this a little more robust? So moving forward, like we have this information and we can identify it, and seeing them be like, yes, okay, I can actually understand that. I think for me reinforces that I do somewhat know what I'm talking about. And I think that just the repeated pieces of that, right, have helped a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of the things, I mean, you mentioned mentors there. Obviously, you know that we've got a mentor program, you've been involved in it and stuff. And I think it's working really well in terms of helping, like you say, those people develop their confidence. But it's also important when you go into a bigger role, you still need, particularly in startup environments or smaller companies, you're still doing tactical stuff. It's not just all of a sudden you're sitting in boardrooms and talking with the exec leadership team. So how do you prioritize things when you're going through that transition? Because I can imagine it's very easy just to get sucked in and try and do the executionary things as well.
That's a really excellent question. And I think I still struggle with that a little bit today. It ebbs and flows, I think. My organization, as I mentioned earlier, is really quite small. So having a team does allow for me to step out a little bit and talk more about the strategic pieces, but I still definitely just by priority have to get sucked into some of the tactical work so that we can make sure that we're meeting our deadlines and getting done what we need to get done. So, I still struggle with that a little bit, but my priority is making sure that we are serving our functional people as we need to do, and then making sure that I make time on a frequent basis to kind of reset and say, all right, what do we need moving forward? What are we going to need in the next year? I feel like this time of year is perfect for that because we're redoing budget, we're redoing goals, right? So all of those pieces kind of come back up and you can start thinking about those again. For me, my goals for the next year are, I think, the driver for me strategically. So I don't lose track of those things. My goals for this year were strategic about planning for the future. What are we going to do for inspection readiness? Those types of things. So keeping those in mind has kind of anchored me to not completely forget about that and kind of go back into the tactical world.
Yeah. So and can we talk a bit about how you manage time, I suppose, and structure your day? You're in a startup, you're probably getting pulled from pillar to post, but do you set boundaries? Do you structure your day? What does that look like from an organizational standpoint?
I definitely do not structure my day because every day is very, very different. And there's always fires. It's just what happens in our role. But I think the key thing that has made me be able to stay sane in the mess of everything is making sure that I'm blocking time for myself on my calendar. Okay. I think we can all understand that calendars are like number one. We're always looking at a calendar. Meetings are getting thrown on. Sometimes people aren't even reaching out to us and we're just getting meetings on our calendar. So making sure that you're taking that time, especially for important things like audit report writing specifically is a great example. It is quite time consuming. I don't think people even understand how much time sometimes has to go into writing audit reports. So I'll block that chunk of time off on my calendar so I have that period of time to just sit down and focus with no interruptions to get that done. And I'll do the same thing for other strategic activities too. So like if I'm getting ready to produce the quality management review meeting, I'll block a chunk of time off and I'll just sit and kind of think about what do we want to present to our management team? What's important? Where am I going to get all these metrics from? What type of information am I going to communicate? So I think from a time management perspective, that's been really important. Above and beyond that, it really is just managing what's coming down the pike on a given day. And these are discussions we always have with our functional teams, right? Because they know every function is obviously going to prioritize what's important to them, but they also need to have an understanding, right? That there are other things that we support. So we have to figure out how those things kind of fit together properly and make sure that we're getting it all done.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hiring and team growth, you've brought people on. It's when you're in a startup organization, you don't really have a defined process around what you need, what you're looking for in terms of the softer skills that, obviously technical ability is a bit clearer, but how have you gone about the sort of hiring process in terms of really understanding the type of person that you want to bring into the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really depends. I think I have the luxury of having been with this company for long enough that I know what the culture is like very well, right? So I know what type of person is going to thrive in our culture. I know what type of person is going to thrive with our teams. So I think, knowing that, I can ask questions on an interview that will specifically get to those soft skills that I think are going to be really important. And different teams work differently. So if I'm hiring somebody for a GCP role versus a GMP role, right, the soft skills needed to work with those teams just might be inherently different because of how those teams work with quality. Hiring is always tricky because you can have a great interview with somebody and you can bring them on and then find out that person maybe really isn't meshing well with the team that they're working with. My style when I bring people on my team is fit is number one. Technical piece, we can always learn technical pieces. Obviously, I don't want to have to teach you everything from scratch, but that to me is always something somebody can learn. I think the soft skills can be a little bit more challenging and can create more of an initial divide if you bring somebody on who's not kind of the right fit personality wise. And I think this is really important for quality too, because a lot of what we do, a lot of our job is making sure that we're able to be persuasive and speak with people in a way that they understand so that they can do their job while also making sure that we're doing things in a compliant manner, which can be a little bit of a balance sometimes.
Yeah. I know obviously the organization has a culture, so that sort of that gives you a path in terms of the softer skills, in terms of what you're looking for. But how do you go about defining specifically within quality, in terms of your team, the softer skills when you haven't hired before? Do you have has that been a work in progress? Have you made some mistakes and then figured out this is what I need? Because it's really, I think it's an art to hiring, and it's really defining those behaviors that you're looking for in people.
Yeah, that's a great question. So while I have not really had a team in the past, and this really is my first time being a manager for all intents and purposes, I have been involved in many, 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 many interviews for other functions as well, especially at Upstream, but in prior companies as well. So I think being involved in the interview process, being able to speak with people, seeing those people get hired on, and then seeing how they've worked out, right? Either successfully or not. Even though I haven't hired that person directly, I've been able to really see that correlation. So I think I was very lucky in the fact that I was able to experience that before becoming a people manager, if you will.
Yeah, okay.
Which allowed me to have maybe a little bit more insight. If I had never been involved in a hiring activity before and then was completely fresh to hiring, I think in that case, it would be really critical to leverage other team members and leaders in the organization to kind of, again, I say the word mentor, I've said that like 50 times today, but I think it's so important to get their experience and understand challenges that have happened for them. And to know mistakes do happen, as I mentioned, right? Like there have been times where people have had a great interview and then they come on board and it's just not as expected. So, to not be worried about that, just know that it could potentially happen. And there are ways to kind of manage through that. But it's something I think we all go through at some point.
Exactly. You're completely right. And if you had to sort of nail down 3 or 4 softer skills that you're looking for in individuals, what would they be?
Yeah, I think flexibility is number one for me, especially as a quality person. I personally think that people who are more rigid in their opinions and perspectives on quality tend to be a little more challenging to work with for other functions. So I think having flexibility is really important. I think, as I mentioned before, having the quality where you can be persuasive is also important so that people understand why we're doing things and why we're asking for things to be done and why we have SOPs written the way that we have them. So I think that's another important quality. And being thoughtful, I think, is maybe my third. Again, I guess that kind of goes with the first one, but making sure that people are thinking about the reasons for why they're doing certain activities or making certain decisions is really important. And I think having those qualities is going to help people grow in their role. As I mentioned before, like I've been very lucky to have the career growth that I've had, and I want to give back to my team and make sure that they also have the options and ability to grow if they so choose. And I want them to be able to see those things. So being able to be flexible and think about things in a kind of different way allows the growth, I think, to happen for a quality step.
Yeah. And just taking it back a step or two to the triggers. I know you mentioned it depends on the phase of development that you're going into, but how would you go about defining hiring triggers for, right, I need to bring in a GMP person, I need to bring in a GCP person, I need to bring in a quality management systems person. Like, how are there any specific triggers that you think, right, this is the milestone that needs to happen, which dictates we hire this person?
That is a great question. And I don't know if I can honestly answer that. For me, it's kind of on feel, right? Like I know that this is getting to be a lot of work. And so if we don't bring somebody in, it's going to be really problematic. I think for me, I like to look ahead, which is why I'm where I am. So being able to look ahead and say, okay, I know we're going to start XYZ manufacturing runs and we're going to have a whole bunch of them coming right next year. That means that we probably should be hiring somebody 6 months in advance, because when we hire somebody, they don't walk in the door the first day and sit down at a computer and start reviewing batch records, right? Like we have to train them. They have to do our SOP reading. They have to learn how to interact with the team. So you have to be a little proactive, I guess, with seeing or expecting what's coming down the pike so that you can make sure that you're hiring the right resources ahead of time. Now, full disclosure, we do not always have that luxury. And there are often times, right, where the work just comes all of a sudden and we are really overloaded and we need support now. In that case, we sometimes will bring on contractors if that makes sense to just have that very quick and easy support so we can at least get our heads above water. But then making sure that we're hiring somebody, the right person, because it's very important. Just to bring a body in is not necessarily the right decision, but making sure that we're able to bring in the right person for that role to support. But I think you do need to look ahead and be proactive, I think, to be most successful in understanding what you're going to have to bring on.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about now the sort of where you are now with the future and your development as a leader. So you're a senior director position, hopefully grow the team, and hopefully the company is doing well and there's sort of bigger roles in the future. What are you really focusing on from a development standpoint for you right now, if you had to almost outline your personal development plan?
Yeah,
what would it look like?
That's a great question. I think for me, I want to develop my people management skills. So this is new for me, and I want to be a good leader for my people. I've had great leaders and I want to kind of emulate that. So learning what it takes to be a good leader for my people, I think is one of my priorities from a soft skill perspective. And again, learning even more how to interact with my functional heads to be more strategically successful and making sure that my quality opinion and quality perspective is being encapsulated by everybody else's functions, right? So making sure that maybe when my tech ops team is developing their goals, right, they're thinking about quality as well and how quality can kind of fit into that.
What are the hardest parts around that when you are trying to build relationships with cross your colleagues in tech ops or clinical or what are the different functions? What have you found the hardest parts of it?
I think the hardest part is just the different priorities that we have in different functions. I know, clinically, a lot of organizations will focus really heavily on, recruitment rates and making sure that we're hitting these particular milestones, which is super important. Don't get me wrong. You need that in order to be a successful organization. But when doing that, making sure that we're also not sacrificing quality is really important. So I think making sure that the teams are aligned on that can be challenging, and making sure that teams aren't getting blinded to some of that, right? You're focusing so much on meeting this goal that maybe these other things are going to happen. They might not be impactful today, but if we continue on this road, right, they might become a problem. So I think that's the biggest thing. And that applies for me too as a quality leader, right? My priorities are very specifically quality driven. But again, we have to understand that it's important that we meet our milestones and our pieces. So how do you balance that priority of making sure that we have the utmost quality while also making sure that we're still able to meet our deliverables?
Yeah. And then on your personal development, like you mentioned, one part of it was the people management side of things. Specifically within people management, what do you want? Not what do you need to improve, but what are the building blocks that you're trying to focus on or want to develop within that bracket of people management?
Yeah, I want to be able to support my people to make sure that they're getting done what they need to get done, but without being completely overwhelmed and burned out. I mean, I think we can all speak to this in industry, is that it just gets crazier and crazier every day and every year. The expectations get higher. The amount of work we have to do just gets increased. So really working with the team and knowing when to step in and support them and saying, no, we can't meet this deadline, or no, we can't produce this deliverable right now, versus, hey, let me grab this for you and I can take care of this for you right now so you can focus on that, versus, no, I'm sorry, you need to figure out a way to get this done, right? Those are three different pathways to things. And certain instances, they're all the right decision, but figuring out when to make each of those decisions, I think, is something that you can only learn with practice.
Yeah. And that also comes with having the confidence to manage upwards as well, and being able to communicate and deal with your bosses and all of the leadership team.
Correct. And that's tricky, right? Because if you have a team member who's like, hey, I don't think I can get this done. I've got all this other stuff to do. Like, how do I prioritize this? I have to be comfortable to say, you know what? That I don't think is important, but I don't need you communicating to that person. Let me take this and say, listen, my person's overwhelmed. This isn't going to be able to get done right now. What can we do to make sure this gets done, but not today? So that can be a very uncomfortable conversation. So you do have to be confident that that is the right decision for your team and prioritize your team.
I think that's one of the main challenges that people at director level or going into bigger roles tend to face, is that confidence in communicating with their boss or with their leadership team around, well, actually we need to say no to this, or we can't do this, because if you don't have the confidence, you can't manage downwards as well.
Right.
Liz, it's been some really good insights into the journey that you're facing, or that you've been on and that you're on. What are you most excited about now?
I just love being able to be involved in the general strategy of drug development. Like, it's just so interesting to me. It's so impactful. And knowing that my role is going to help make drugs for people that are safe and effective is like just absolutely awesome. So I'm really excited to continue to be able to do that and to help people and spread the good word of quality.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got some quick fire questions to throw at you before just to round off the conversation. This could be personally, professionally. Who's been the biggest inspiration to you in your career?
Oh, gosh, I don't even know if I can answer that off the top of my head. I think my current boss, Mercida, has been absolutely outstanding and has helped me grow more in the past 2.5 years than I think I have previously. So she's been outstanding to work with, and I only hope I can be as good as her someday.
Good answer. What's the one value that guides how you lead?
Trust. I want people to be able to trust me and trust my decisions and trust that I'll support them and trust that I'll get done when we need to get done.
Yeah. It's a difficult question to answer at the top of the head, but is there any, or what's the best career advice that you've received?
Probably to take care of yourself. So make yourself the priority. I know we always talk about work. It's very important. We all need to have our job, but we can't have our job if we ourselves are not healthy and doing okay. So knowing when you might be burnt out, knowing when you might be pushing towards a wall, and being able to take a step back and preserve yourself so that you can continue to grow professionally. I think it's so, so, so important. And I did not have that advice early on in my career. And I definitely went through some really challenging times. So I think for me now, that's something I always think about in the back of my mind, is that work will be there. My health is a priority. My family's health is a priority. And, I need to focus on that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge topic. I think we could have a whole separate podcast on managing burnout, managing yourself in itself. But no, I completely agree. Final question then. For people that would like to follow in your footsteps, progress up the ladder in quality leadership, someone that's starting out in their journey early on in their career, maybe sort of dabbling into going into management, what would, apart from look after yourself, what would the advice that you would give to someone in that position? Don't
be afraid to take risks. If you have a thought, speak it. If you have an idea, let people know, and don't be afraid to make decisions, because the only way you're going to be more successful is if you're able to trust yourself, right? As we talked about earlier. So making those decisions and seeing how it goes, like, you will grow. Even if it's the wrong decision, again, we all make wrong decisions. So you will still grow from that and you will still learn.
Awesome. Liz, thanks so much for giving us your time. It's been really fascinating. You've had a great journey so far. You're still going through it. I really look forward to seeing how your career progresses, and all the great things that you guys are doing at Upstream. So congratulations on what you've achieved. Look forward to seeing it all unraveled, and best of luck for the rest of the year and moving into next year.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks, Liz.
Thank you for listening to today's show. I hope that you got value from it, whether you're starting your career in quality or if you're at the top of your field. Today's episode was brought to you by RX Group. I'm the founder of RX Group. We are a pharma and biotech recruitment organization focusing purely on quality assurance. We recruit consultants and senior level permanent quality professionals into the pharma and biotech industry. If we can support you, whether that be in a hiring capacity or if you yourself are looking for work, Please get in touch with me on LinkedIn, visit our LinkedIn page where you can subscribe to the podcast, and visit our website, www.rx-group.io, to find out more about us. See you soon.